All right, I just shot a feature film on the RED Komodo, and I have some thoughts about the whole thing. Now, the RED Komodo has built itself as a kind of pocket-sized, affordable cinema camera. And having recently wrapped up principal photography on a full-length feature independent film, I ended up using the RED Komodo to capture it. So the real question comes now after that is, how does the RED Komodo measure up as a cinema camera? And to kind of start how I got here, I do want to say that when I was originally planning to shoot my film, my gut instinct was to shoot this with an RED Mini LF. But as I got further along in the pre-production process, I realized that the Komodo really was probably the better choice for my very specific production. And all of this really just kind of largely came down to the fact that, like most of us out there today, our film was dealing with an extremely small and tight budget. So I knew that my camera was going to be very important in helping us fit in there. I needed a camera that could operate with a small team and be very, very fast. I was also planning on doing extensive gimbal work on the film, and I knew that I could pair the RED Komodo with some cinema lenses, and it would be no problem with the RS3 Pro that I had access to. But if I went with a bigger camera like the RED Mini, I think putting cinema lenses and RED on RS3 Pro, that's right at the breaking point of that. I didn't think that was really going to be practical for what we need. So now, all that being said, because now that I have gone and shot this whole film with a RED Komodo, I learned a couple things that I think could be very, very important for you if you're thinking about doing something very similar to this. Now, the first thing I want to start off with is the image quality, because really, everything else kind of comes off of that. And I'm just going to say, after shooting a full-length feature film with the RED Komodo, I was very, very impressed with the image quality I was able to get from the RED sensor. It was really, really beautiful. And I realize that this is a completely subjective component, but I do feel that the combination of the RED sensor and I used Canon Cinema Glass, I feel that was really able to give me a nice professional looking image. The highlight roll off, the contrast and colors, just really all combined with that RED sensor to give me what I subjectively would consider a more cinematic feel to the picture than I would have gotten with another camera, even like my R5 or even a C300, which is a camera that I absolutely love. Another thing about the RED Komodo that I found very, very surprising was the fact that it was so reliable. I mean, this was a rock solid system for me. I ended up pushing 2 different RED Komodos, and I pushed them hard for 7 straight days. And in all that time, for those very long days, we never ran into a single issue with any of the cameras whatsoever. And as someone that's used RED cameras in the past, this was a very, very welcome change for me. I've used older REDs like RED Epics and RED Ones and stuff in the past, and I'd often run into like weird quirks with them, like overheating issues if you push them too hard. So it was really, really nice having such a rock-solid system to work with, and it was one of the things I was really hesitant about taking my Komodo on a set because I've had these weird quirks. Happy to say I got on set, never gave me a problem. It worked like an absolute dream. Now, aside from the reliability issues, there's another really important thing that I discovered on this Komodo that I knew before, but just putting on a set like this, it became really, really important. And that is, once you start using the traffic light system for exposure on the whole RED system, you will never want to work with anything else on any type of camera, really ever. Now, because RED cameras don't really actually have a native ISO, if you will, if you're shooting in RED RAW, the traffic light meters are an essential tool in letting you know exactly how your sensor is exposing the image. But this became such an important tool on the set for me that I kind of wish every single camera system I ever used had something like this. Because I really found from a film perspective, having the traffic lights just gave you the technical assurance that you knew you were walking off set with enough information in post and you knew the image was safe on that sensor. This is an incredibly welcome thing. It's one of the great benefits of working on the RED system. In addition to the traffic lights, you can't talk about the RED Komodo without talking about that 6K sensor. And really, I have found that 6K pretty much comes down to be the perfect size to capture with in 2023, today's world. And I personally really like shooting at 6K. It kind of forms that perfect compromise of giving me a little extra resolution in case I need to punch in for stabilization or slight reframing, without killing my hard drives with all that much space. If you work with 8K footage, you will quickly realize it'll just destroy your hard drive space. And on my film, I still shot 22 terabytes of space, so it's already gigantic. So having that 6K option, it's a really, really nice size to work with, and I think it just kind of checks the boxes of exactly what you want, giving you extra resolution without completely obliterating your hard drives. And while I love the 6K resolution, you got to talk about exactly how you're recording that 6K resolution, and that's where the RED RAW really comes into its own. Now, RED RAW is an absolutely fantastic format to work with. I think anyone that's ever worked with it would attest to that. So it just really gives you a ton of flexibility that you know when you're shooting, as long as you're obeying those traffic lights, you know you have a lot of room to play with once you get into post. And what's great, even though it's a super powerful, flexible RAW, it's super easy on your system. We could actually play dailies back on a laptop in the studio. So it's just a really, really good codec to work with. Now, there was one area that I was really concerned about when it came to shooting my feature film on the RED Komodo, and it actually has to do with the RED Komodo's low light capabilities. I mean, the RED Komodo is not known as a red light camera. It certainly is not a red light camera compared to the Sony systems, or honestly, even the Canon systems. This was something I was worried about. I was worried it would really limit some of the creative choices that I, as a director and cinematographer, wanted to pursue in my film. And in reality, even though we had a very small budget for lights, I did find that the Komodo, when paired with the fast Canon cinema primes that we're using, it was able to achieve the low light with no problem. We spent most of the movie on a set, and our lights never really got above 10% power. And even in that situation, we were still able to monitor off of a 400 ISO on the RED Komodo. And when you coupled that with the traffic lights, you knew that your sensor was getting what it needed, and you had the flexibility to fix it up in post. Now, that being said, I was on a very controlled set, and on any future cinema camera I want, if you have like really challenging situations, this is an area where the Komodo could struggle. But I find if you have cinema glass and you can just control the lighting a little bit, which should be a factor in most movies you have, that the RED Komodo actually held up pretty well for me, and it should hold up, I would think, in about 80% of the situations. So 20% of situations, if you're having like a crazy low light shoot, you have no budget for lights, then you may need to take that in consideration. Now, all that being said, due to the form factor of the RED Komodo, there are definitely some limitations of it that you need to be aware of if you're thinking about going and shooting a whole feature film with it. The first thing you gotta bring up is just the inputs on this camera are just awkwardly placed. I mean, they're kind of on the bottom there, and this is something that has been addressed on the RED Komodo X, but if you're dealing with a RED Komodo, you're gonna have to deal with the ports. They're small and they're underneath everything. I also found it really limiting having only one SDI port. I ended up daisy chaining a Teradek, a monitor, an EVF, and it would have been really nice to have one more SD output. I understand this is a pricing thing to keep the price low, but it is a limiting factor, especially once you're on a set and you end up having to communicate your image with so many other people. The other issue with only having one SDI port is that if for some reason it blows out, well, you got no backup. The camera's basically dead in the water. All you got is that little top screen. Now, the Komodo X has helped to partially solve this because you can hook up a DSM-C3 monitor without an SDI to your camera, so you basically get that SDI free to do other stuff. But if you are using a Komodo, this is something you need to be aware of. There are also two other things that I found missing from the RED Komodo that I did find limitations that I wish were there, and I did really find a bit hindering in a shoot for a movie. The first one has got to be the lack of internal NDs. Internal NDs are just one of those variables that make such a quality of life difference basically on any camera you have. And nowadays they've become so ubiquitous and so common on any cinema camera that it's really, really hard not to have that on a body. So if you are looking at doing any type of cinema body, it is one of those things in today's world that it is a limitation you have to be aware of. The other limitation that I really had was the lack of a built-in timecode port on the body of the Komodo itself. Now, there are lots of options to get timecode on the RED Komodo, but all of them involve adding something to the camera which adds extra bulk and extra connections and time and setup and everything like that. And even my Canon R5C has a timecode port built into it. And timecode is just a basic thing that I would personally expect to see any cinema camera to have, and it is missing natively on the RED Komodo. There's one other thing you need to consider about for the RED Komodo, and that is essentially the modular nature of the camera. Now, the fact that it's so modular, the Komodo is just one of those things you better be prepared to spend some time and some money getting this camera kitted out to your preference and shooting style. I mean, this is not like a C300 that you basically pop out of a case, throw a handle on, and you're ready to start shooting with. You really do have to set it up the way you want it to, or you're not gonna have a good experience with it. So now with all that being said, is the RED Komodo right for your indie project? Well, I can speak for myself. I will say this. Overall, the RED Komodo delivered a very satisfactory experience for me. I mean, at the end of the day, the final image really is the most important thing. And the Komodo captured a fantastic and flexible image. I also feel that that 6K capture really allowed some future proofing on my project, knowing I had that extra resolution. So I think as long as you go into your project realizing that the Komodo does come with some limitations, you'll probably be okay. And I think it can definitely deliver a very, very satisfactory and really beautiful motion picture experience for you. And as a side note, don't forget the Komodo X actually does solve some of the issues that I talked about. But what that means is that the first generation Komodos are going to now be cheaper than ever on the resale market. So if you're willing to deal with some of these limitations, the Komodo could absolutely be a great choice to help you shoot your next feature film. And you might get one for a fantastic bargain. Anyway, guys, love to hear what you have to say about this. Leave me notes and comments down below. Yeah, I'd rather keep on shooting, and I'll talk to you soon.